Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Subway to Shea podcast. Now, I know the intro has not played yet. We are going to get to all of that stuff. I appreciate everyone for tuning in, even for this beginning part, because um, on social media earlier today, I had announced the passing of my dog, Chico, Chico Rivera. And he was a very important part of my life for 18 years. And I know a lot of people don't have the opportunity to have a pet for that long. Some don't live that long. And I had the privilege to have Chico for 18 years of my life. And he was very important to me. He was a very important part of Mrs. Subway to Shea and the 10 years that she's been a part of my life. And it's been a struggle over the past week or so, dating back to the time where we knew that Chico had to be put to rest, which was the hardest decision I've ever made in my life. And I still struggle with it today. And I'll probably struggle with it probably for the rest of my life. But what I do know is that he's in a good place right now. He is with Mama Subway to Shea, my mom, who, you know, let me throw back real quick a story here and I'm sorry to be doing this, but this is an outlet for me, and I appreciate you for being a part of this. But we got Chico in a store. Now, I know a lot of people rescue a lot of dogs, but back then this was a little bit different. And he introduced himself by standing just next to my mom. And my mom had cancer at the time. We didn't know how much time she had to live. And Chico came into our lives and, you know, it gave us more time with her because he meant so much to her. And, I promised to take care of him. She passed away. We got him in 2007. She passed away in 2010. So she only really got 3 years with him. And I spent most of my life taking care of him and protecting him, making sure he felt good and healthy and strong. And we'd always go to the doctors, and he was a fighter. He had multiple surgeries, stuff that we thought he'd never come back from. He did. And he really fought all the way to the end, and he finally told us it was time. So, it's emotional for me. And, I apologize for, starting off the show like this, but I don't want to say I wanted to get this out of the way first, but I wanted to take care of this first in case there was any emotions. I've been emotional all week, whether it's at work, at home. The tears are flowing all day. And this right here is an outlet for me. The Subway to Shea podcast has been an outlet for me for 5 years. And now that I'm going live doing this show over the past year, I get to connect with all of you and talk with all of you. And you've been a big part of my life and my, I don't want to say career, but my time as a content creator creating, Mets content. So I just want to, thank you guys for giving me this time and hanging out with me. And I hope the chat is lively tonight. Let's talk Mets. Let's make it fun. It's a solo show for me. And it's, just, and I'm sorry, Chico just meant so much to me in my life. We call him Cheech. Some of us, sometimes we call him Chi, do it for short. And not only was he a big part of just, if you saw the post that I posted earlier today, you know that he's a huge Mets fan. And I'll post the pictures as we get off of here and get ready with the show. But, we always watch Mets games together. All the opening days we were watching together, and this postseason was an important one. Obviously, the Mets finally had a nice long run here for the first time since 2015. And, Mrs. Subway to Shea was getting ready to have little Subway to Shea. So there was really not much we could do but to, be focused and watch on these games because I am. But Chico was sitting there right with us. And the funny thing is that through all of the struggles for this team, anytime some type of big moment tried to happen, we would all hold hands, and I would hold Mrs. Subway to Shea's hand, and we would hold Chico's hand. And in that moment, Pete Alonso hits the big 3-run home run. Again, we do it again in the Philadelphia series. Francisco Lindor, the grand slam, and that gets them to the NLCS. We tried in the Dodgers series, but we could only get so far. But those are memories that I will remember and take away with me. And nothing but love for you, Chico. I appreciate you being a part of my life. This episode and this season is dedicated to my dog, Chico Rivera. And I will love him forever. And I will miss him always. So thank you, Chico, for everything.
This is a Willets Point Shea Stadium bound 7 express train. The next and last stop is Willets Point, Shea Stadium.
Oh, yes, it is the Subway to Shea podcast. Anthony Rivera here with you, talking about all the news and happenings surrounding that team from Queens, the New York Mets. Episode 192 from the Subway to Shea studios in my office. We are 8 episodes away from 200. I think we are 4 subscribers away from 950 as we march on to 1,000 subscribers. I appreciate you all for tuning in here. 40 of you right off the bat in here to talk about these New York Mets. And the season is finally underway. Excited. Got the road trip out of the way, and we are ready for what it will be the home opener, which I hopefully gets played because I feel like every opening day so far, we have rain in the forecast. And I'd like to stop seeing that happen. I hope that we get this game played on Friday against the Toronto Blue Jays at Citi Field. But we are going to start from the past in this past week and all the top storylines to come out of that. The Mets finished their opening road trip 3-3. They went 1-2 against the Houston Astros, and they went 2-1 against the Miami Marlins. And before I continue, make sure you're following Subway to Shea on X, Instagram, and TikTok at Subway to Shea. You can follow me, Ant Rivera, on X at Ant Rivera86, and you can subscribe if you want to listen to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. But if you want to be a part of this chat, which is a lot of fun every week that we get to do the show, make sure you're subscribing on YouTube. You can also watch on X, but if you're watching on X, come on over. Come on over to YouTube. Let's have some fun in the chat. We got 41 people in the room right now. Thank you, everyone. There's so many people in here to shout. G-Money Stacks, Stanley Babbage, D in here, Brad, Carlos Ramos, Cindy, Carlos Ortiz, Jeff Cohen, who is he's got the Baseball and BBQ podcast. Saw my guy, Ibby from Till Met Studios Part, Matt Ibanez in here as well. John K, appreciate you for being in here as well. Thank you to everyone. If I missed you, Blunt Thoughts as well. My guy, if you follow his YouTube as well, Blunt Thoughts Sports. Hector does a great job there on his show and does a lot of the live streaming during the games, which eventually I would like to do something like that. But now that I have the MLB app, and we'll get into the MLB app later on and what happened on opening day, but I feel like my feed is 4 minutes behind everybody else. So if I'm trying to do this live stream during the game or this watch along and everyone's putting in the chat everything that's happening and I haven't seen it yet, it makes for just a weird experience. But at some point, I'd like to try one of those. Maybe if they do one of those ESPN broadcasts, or they had the Apple Plus one, or they do the Roku one at like 11 in the morning or something like that. We'll try one of those eventually. But let's get on with today's show. And how else are we going to start with Pete Alonso powering the Mets during this road trip? Grand slam in game 1 versus Miami in a 10-4 win. Then he had the 3-run game tying home run versus Miami, 6-5 win that they won in extras. I think that besides that grand slam, that 3-run home run, that game-tying home run from Pete Alonso probably was one of the best at-bats we've seen from him. A 9-pitch at-bat, fouling off balls, having great eye recognition, was locked in that entire. I even said before he hit the home run and before that at-bat that he looked so locked in this entire game. And he basically carried the Mets offense, in that final series finale against the Miami Marlins. So he went 3 for 4. You look at the, the exit velocity looked great. If you saw Michael Mayer's tweet, over 100 on each hit. Looks relaxed out there. So I want to know what your thoughts are from what we've seen from Pete Alonso already and what we need to see from him moving forward. This is, the start that he's having. And I know it's only 6 games. We can't get too crazy. And we're going to get into the struggles of the Mets lineup. Can't get too crazy about anything. But what we've seen from Pete so far, so good, because he's had big clutch hits and he basically carried the Mets offense in this Miami series where they had no business honestly winning. They looked lethargic out there. They looked, awful. It was boring games that we were watching from this Mets offense. The pitching did its job, but the Mets offense was not doing their job. And, you look at a guy like Juan Soto getting on base, and whether it's walks, singles, he was getting on base doing his part. But a lot of the rest of this Mets lineup has not really been doing much. And one of the better hitters, which we'll get into later, Luis Torrens of all people. But Pete Alonso has been big to start. He needs to have this big year because, last offseason, looking at everyone that was in free agency, all the availability that was in trade at first base, Pete Alonso was not going to get the deal that he wanted because people found value in other players that played that position, and they were not going to pay Pete the money that he wanted. Fast forward to next offseason. Pete has a big year, coupled with Vladimir Guerrero asking for $500 million. Pete may not get 200, 300, whatever, but he'll get a better deal than he did this offseason because he's going to be a cheaper option out there. And maybe he'll get less term, less years on the deal. Maybe that'll work out for him. So Pete Alonso has a lot going for him right now, and he needs to keep it up. He needs to channel that kind of, I want to say that 2022 Pete Alonso, where he was hitting for average, he was slugging, he was hitting the home runs, he was getting the RBIs. He was an all-around hitter in 2022. Whereas in 2023, he tried compensating for more power like he did in 2021 and 2020. And obviously he did hit more home runs, but the batting average dipped big time. He wasn't getting on base. The clutch ability that he had wasn't really there. And then we saw last year, he was not clutch at all during the season. I think batting a little over 100 with men in scoring position with the bases loaded. Already off to a better start than what we've seen from him last season. So Pete, if he can get himself to being that guy that wants to get paid in the offseason and probably will be leaving, this is the opportunity right now to do so. Let me get to your thoughts on Pete Alonso right now. D saying Pete is hitting everything hard. He likes it. Yeah, I agree. Everything is coming off hard off the bat. The exit velocity. I'm not too keen on obviously exit velocity because you can hit the ball hard, but if it goes out, I mean, it really doesn't matter. But we all know he just mashes the ball. So for him, it works. And he's hitting the ball out of the park. He's got 2 home runs on the season. He's closing in on Darryl Strawberry's. I don't want to say, I guess, home run leader for all-time leader for the New York Mets. And he's doing the thing. You're also saying that P is also laying off that outside slider. Key, important part right here is Pete Alonso laying off that slider. We've talked about it for years, how Pete Alonso has struggled trying to lay off that slider that's in the other team's dugout. He's always swinging at that. And that at bat, that 9-pitch at bat, where, he is fouling off balls, where he is not reaching, as D states here, for that outside slider, led to that big home run, that big game-tying home run. Jeff Cohen saying Pete's approach is much better, not chasing the low and outside pitch. Absolutely. Absolutely. See, we're all on the same page. We know what Pete needs to do. We've seen him for so many years. We know what Pete needs to do to succeed here and to succeed at the plate on a consistent basis. And that is laying off that outside pitch, laying off that outside slider or curveball. Cindy saying, I will be the first to admit I might have been wrong to give up on Pete. He has been great so far. Look, Pete has struggled, right? We saw the struggles in 2023 and we had much concern about it because he was asking for money that at that point in time he probably didn't deserve, right? He wanted that, Aaron Judge type deal. First off, he's not going to get that as a first baseman. And then wanting to be the highest paid first baseman is a really hard thing to give a guy who's going to be over 30. To give him the years that he wants is going to be tough because for every Miguel Cabrera out there, there is a guy like career and a great start to his career, but faded, right? Albert Pujols faded into his 30s. Especially when he went to the Angels. And Pete has shown signs of that. Can he adjust with his approach, like Jeff Cohen and D were saying? It's possible. D saying Pete can do some real damage this year with this approach, 100%. Yes, I agree. He can. And obviously he's going to go through some slumps. But if he can stick to the approach, if he can take on the adjustments, we're talking about a guy who deserves to be an all-star. He's been an all-star. We've seen the best of Pete Alonso. Can he adjust and keep himself from fading to the other side? Who's the other guy in Baltimore? What was the first baseman's name? Was it Jones? Chris? I can't remember his name. Where they gave him a huge contract and he faded. If you guys know, put it in a check because the noggin here is brain farting right now. So if you know the name, let me know and we'll get to that. Carlos Ortiz saying Soto carried the Mets in the first series and the Polar Bear in the second series. Wait until they both click together. Not only them, but the entire offense, right? I mean, the entire offense has been abysmal outside of, like you said, what Soto did in the first series and what Pete Alonso has done in the second one. You can see Sidney McGrath saying maybe a little bit right now that Soto has been pressing a little bit, and maybe he is. We knew when we got Juan Soto that he would be taking walks, right? And it's important for him to get on base, for Pete Alonso, for Mark Vientos, for Brandon Nimmo to be the RBI contributors to this team. And Soto's going to do the same as well. Obviously, he did not do that on opening day when he had the bases loaded in the ninth inning and got struck out by Josh Hader, but it's Josh Hader. He's a top-line closer, and that was a wicked pitch. What did he do the next day? Came back, hit a home run, and he gets on base. Let's give him time. I'm giving this offense some time here to get themselves going. Great comment here by Carlos. He is in regards to Pete Alonso, he's also looking to go opposite field or straight up the middle like he did in 2022. Like I mentioned, right? In 2022, he was an all-around hitter. Why? Because he went to the opposite field, whether it was home runs or doubles. I don't know about you, but in 2022, I was like, man, Pete Alonso really reminds me of Mike Piazza. Maybe that was the nail in the coffin for me saying that, but he really did. Piazza went all across the field. Doubles to right field and then to left field and to center field. It was really looking like the second coming of Mike Piazza. And then 2023 happened. So it's not Mountcastle. I'm trying to think of Chris Davis. Thank you. Carson. Right on the money. Chris Davis is the one who got the big contract in the mid 2010s, and he fizzled right after getting that contract. All power, nothing else. But then he just stunk it up. He more or less became Joey Gallo. Carson also saying, Pete Alonso, he's not doing that eyes closed, heavy breathing garbage before over swinging. He forgets how powerful he is, which is why he folds in these dial-in situations. First 6 games have been his vintage form. Absolutely. Great comment by Carson. Make sure you check out Mets Weekly, which is on right after Subway to Shea at 7 p.m. So make sure you check them out as well. I appreciate everyone in the comments. You are right. All Chris Davis is the one. Mountcastle's still on the Orioles. I just remember Chris Davis being that guy that, really got this huge contract and just fizzled out. Ryan Howard had a better career. Pujols had the better career. But Chris Davis was one of those guys that everyone thought was going to be the next big thing. And as Carlos Ramos is saying, the Orioles are still paying him deferred money. Why don't they talk about, why isn't there a Chris Davis day? There's so many guys that are being deferred money to, but we keep talking about Bobby Bonilla. Until Bobby Bonilla's contract is gone. And I think the Mets have leaned into it. Steve Cohen, didn't he bring him out a big check as well for $1 million every year? It is what it is. But as we move on with this Mets offense and the struggles, obviously Francisco Lindor. We'll start off with Francisco Lindor because I want to make it quick. I don't know about you guys, but I am not concerned about Francisco Lindor. This is his usual MO, right? I mean, he starts off slow and then he lights it up mid-year for the rest of the season. So I'm not going too crazy over what we've seen from Francisco Lindor, which I think he only has 2 hits on the season, but he's got two RBIs out of it as well, which the Mets have been struggling to score runs here. And as D say, he likes warmer weather. He just had his baby boy, so congratulations to Francisco Lindor. Carl's Ramos saying we need to have a convo with Katya, his wife, for Lindor's slow starts. Well, we know he just had his baby. came back to play the game right after that. God bless to him and his family for their third kid, a baby boy. And look, he's always been a guy that's a slow starter, but he has the resume that shows every year that he will kick out of that and kick it into high gear. And probably last season, after that rough start, after batting, what was it, 089 in April, after turning his season around, last season was probably his best season as a New York Met and one of his most clutch. There would be a more of a conversation for him to be MVP if he didn't hurt his back. He would have been 30-30 again. So a lot of people not concerned. G Money Stacks, Cindy McGrath saying not concerned at all. Corey at ESB, our friends at ESB, feeling a Lindor or Soto walk-off for tomorrow. From your lips to God's ears, let's make it happen. I just want to win at the home opener. I know they didn't win their opening day game, but win the home opener with, I guess, Tyler McGill is going to be on the mound. We'll get into the lineup later. But looking at the rest of the lineup, because to me, Francisco Lindor, I am not worried about. Mark Vientos, if it wasn't for yesterday's game, I would say that I'm not as worried about Mark Vientos. But dude struggled big time yesterday, and it dragged out onto the field as well. So maybe this day off helps Mark Vientos. He did get that one RBI. I don't know if it was an RBI double or RBI single. He's only got 2 hits on the season. The good thing with Mark Vientos is he's not striking out a lot. In 24 at-bats, Mark Vientos only has 4 strikeouts, and that's been the biggest concern, right? He kind of has that issue that Pete Alonso has where they swing at that slider away. But 4 strikeouts in 24 at-bats, a pretty good deal for Mark Vientos considering where he was last year. Maureen says Vientos needs to get his head out of his ass. Hopefully it happens on opening day at home, right? They had the day off. He had that issue. I don't know if you remember. I think it was in game 2 where he did not run out what could have been a hit for him if he would have ran just a little bit harder instead of slowing down. He would have had a hit there. We know he's slow, but he slowed down there and he could have had a hit. And we had to have Carlos Mendoza, Lindor, and Antoine Richardson talk to him. And he said he would never do it again. So, look, Vientos is going through it right now. He's beating himself up over it. But the thing that gives me a little bit of solace here, and it's kind of the same thing we talk about Lindor. I know it's a smaller resume. But last season, when the chips could have gotten worse for Mark Vientos, he always found a way, and we talked about this with Pete Alonso, to adjust so that there was no prolonged slumps. That's why I have faith in Mark Vientos turning this around. And he really is going to have all the time in the world to turn this around because guess what? Brett Baty has not really done much. Luis Angel Acuna, same thing. Ronnie Mauricio, nowhere near ready. There is no Jose Iglesias to come up and take over. Vientos is going to have all the time in the world to get himself right. And let's not forget, when the lights shine the brightest, Mark Vientos gave us what was possibly one of the best postseason performances by an offensive player in Mets history. So let's give him a little bit of time. Mark Vientos is becoming one of my favorite guys on the team, and I just want to see him do well. Especially, he wasn't really the guy that was talked about as much when it came to the prospects and the Mets babies or the baby Mets. It was always Francisco Alvarez, number one overall pick, number overall prospect. Brett Baty, top prospect. Mark Vientos kind of was left in the dust here. And so far, if you include last season, he's been the best out of the three. So let's give him a little bit of time and see where he goes from there. Carlos Ramos saying Swaggy V will be fine. I trust Swaggy V. D says he's so swaggy that he should be okay. You're right. Brad saying Vientos is a slow starter as well. Carson, Donovan Walton, legend. I know that you are the big Donovan Walton guy. Outside of an injury, I don't know if we see him, or maybe, the next two guys we get into, maybe they are so bad that Donovan Walton makes his presence known on this team. We'll see. We will definitely see. Rosie K saying Vientos will figure it out. And Brad mentioning how much longer does the Baty experience last? Well, Brad, I'm glad you brought that up because that is our next topic. What is Brett Baty's leash on this team? I made the post yesterday and it got a lot of traction. A lot of people commented. How long do you give Brett Baty? He is my biggest concern. And I say that because this is not the first. This is not the second. This is not the third. This is now the fourth opportunity that Brett Baty has been given. And again, look, it's only 6 games, but he only has 1 hit so far. The defense, not great. If it wasn't for Luis Torrens saving him in that Wednesday game, in that series finale, the Mets would lose that series. When he had the opportunity to throw home with time, and he Lucas Dudas it. Luis Torrens saved him and made the tag, and the Mets end up winning that game. This is the only time that Brett Baty will have to seize the day. They chose Brett Baty over bringing back Jose Iglesias because they believed in what they saw from him in spring training. The guy has a great spring training every year. He plays well in the minors every year, but he comes up to the major leagues and struggles every time. Why is that? What is it about the major leagues that Brett Baty is having such a hard time with? And it's not like this is his second time. He's had a few at-bats. He's had ample amount of time throughout his career to get himself going. You thought he was going to carry his spring over into being the starting second baseman with Jeff McNeil being out? That's what the thought was. It's like he's buckling under pressure. And then you look at a guy like Luis Angel Acuna, who only has 2 hits in 11 at-bats. So he's not lighting it up offensively either. But he shows me a little bit more under pressure. I don't know if you guys agree with this. He shows me a little bit more under pressure than what Brett Baty does. Look at that error he had in the first game of the season, that double play that cost the Mets a run. You would think that Acuna would fall under the pressure there. No, bounces back, had a solid defensive play later on in the game, and had a huge at-bat. I don't care that he walked. It was a huge walk. to get off of Josh Hader to give the Mets a chance to try to win that game. They end up losing it, but it got Soto to the plate. How long do you give Baty if he keeps struggling? Jeff McNeil will return. Who gets sent down? Do you keep Baty up here? Does he thrive as more of a bench guy? Because Luisangel Acuna, everyone wants him to start. But once McNeil comes back, they ain't doing splitsies. McNeil is probably going to be the starting second baseman, and then there's going to be the backup. But then who do you keep? Because Francisco Lindor doesn't have a backup shortstop. Luisangel Acuna can provide that. Tough decisions for the Mets to make here, but they wanted to go with the youth. David Stearns wanted to go with and believed in these two guys, and it just hasn't worked out. So what is going to happen with Brett Baty? Carlos Ramos saying, I'm willing to give Baty the month of April. The only reason I'm willing to be patient is because the only way Baty will build any trade value is by hitting well. If not, we have a permanent AAA player, which I totally agree with. We desperately need Brett Baty to start hitting. Because if the Mets want to trade eventually for a pitcher or whatever, especially starting pitcher, Brett Baty needs to play and be good so he could be a part of a trade package if they decide to do so. Otherwise, just by what we've seen so far, the best, right, I think, is a utility player off the bench. And considering all the stuff we heard about him going into the 2021 season, 2022 season, how he was going to be this big-time prospect and be our third baseman, the next big third baseman, it just hasn't worked out. D says that Baty's getting on his nerves. He needs to add up to trade value. I agree. Stanley Babbage saying start Acuna. Carlos Ortiz saying Baty gets April and that's it. Carlos Ramos saying if he doesn't build any trade value, we are stuck with a career AAA player. Let's at least try to be patient. But if it's up to me, I start Acuna over both Baty and McNeil. I mean, we saw Luisangel Acuna get the start against a right-hander, where probably was the perfect spot for Brett Baty to be getting a start. And they went to Acuna instead. So that tells you a lot there. Corey at ESB saying, still hoping he can find himself, but he's trending towards a Nick Evans type career. Oh my goodness, Nick Evans. A blast from the past. How many prospects? And this is why I don't hug these prospects. Nick Evans. Gavin Cecchini. I mean, the list goes up. Fernando Martinez. The list goes on and on. Lastings Millage. You can Alex Ochoa, on and on. That's why I don't hug any of these prospects. I don't mind Stearns building this, prospect pool, this minor league system. I think they need to build it more with pitching, right? Build this farm system with pitching and then go and get your free agents, position players that way, because pitchers are super expensive. But these guys, they're not always the best, right? They're not always what we hear all about them every season, how good this prospect is. Did anyone see Jacob deGrom being the ace of the staff when they had Syndergaard, Harvey, Wheeler? Those were the three talked about. And even Wheeler to a lesser extent. And now he's the best out of all the pitchers. Shout out to G Money Stacks. Yes, make sure you hit the subscribe button, notification bell for all the episodes for the Subway to Shea podcast. I have a special bonus episode coming out, probably about like a 5-minute episode with Chef Adam Richmond. I was at the What's New at Citi Field event, and I got to interview Chef Adam Richmond, talk about his burgers. So you'll see that at some point this weekend. Make sure you check that out. Carson saying it's not even the results with Baty that are making it sour. It's the fact that nothing changed. Pounding the ball into the ground, out in front on the secondary stuff, flying open on inside pitches. When you see the same and there's no adjustments being made, that's this whole talk with the offense is about. Making the adjustments, not doing it. Same day one issues. He's 25 now. Tick-tock. The clock is ticking. The clock is ticking on Brett Baty. Cindy McGrath saying, I have always felt Baty can't handle playing in and for New York, but without trade value, he will never the change of scenery he needs. Yeah, he has to hit for there to be any sort of trade value worth it to get something for him. Maureen also agrees with Cindy on that. G Money Stack saying, isn't versatility important when it comes to baseball athletes of the New York Mets? It is. You're seeing it in the bullpen and with the pitching staff. Obviously, Jeff McNeil is one of those versatile players. You can play Luis Angel Acuna right now anywhere, but you got to hit. You got to hit too. And Brett Baty's not doing that. And if Brett Baty's not doing that and he's not giving you stellar defense, you might as well go with Acuna, who, even if he hits the same way Baty's hitting, he's going to give you a lot better defense, even though he had that error on opening day. Brad saying in the same comment with Carson, too many ground balls for Baty. And even when he hits the ball in the air, they're not hard hit pitches. So we'll see what happens with Baty. There's been a lot of the struggles of this Mets offense, but one guy who's not only stepped it up on offense, but always steps it up on defense. We got to talk about Luis Torrens here real quick. To start the season, batting .333, has a homer, 2 RBIs, 2 extra base hits. His defense has been on point. Already gunned down 3 out of the 4 base stealers. We knew from last season that he could, cut off a man from stealing. And I wonder, I know the Yankees have Austin Wells, but could you imagine the tandem right now of Austin Wells and Luis Torrens in the backstop for the Yankees? I can't believe we were able to pry away Luis Torrens and how good he has been. This has been one of the best trades of the David Stearns era. If this keeps up and he continues, and we know at some point it's going to slow down a little bit, but if Torrens keeps up, when Francisco Alvarez comes back, I would look to ease Alvy back, especially with his hand, and have them split 50-50 to start, at least. I talked about it with Kelly Franco. We discussed it a couple weeks ago on the podcast about the hamate bone and how hard it could be to get that power back when you are, nursing that injury and trying to get back to 100%. And that's Francisco Alvarez's game, is being a power hitter. So Torrens might have to play 50-50 right now. He's looked really good. Also, congratulations to Hayden Singer getting his first start, getting his first hit, which was a double. Nice to see how he's doing. Brad saying Torrens has been money and has given them something on offense. That's all you could ask for. The offense is a plus to me. Most importantly, he's handled the pitching staff well. You saw the adjustments being made with Kodai Senga, that being the first time he's thrown to him, and being able to throw out runners, especially when you got slow to the mound with Edwin Diaz, who, you could steal 10 bases off of Edwin Diaz in an inning because his delivery is so slow. But you got Luis Torrens back there, and he can make sure that you get out of an inning. That's for dang sure. Jeff Cohen saying Torrens is terrific. Carlos Ramos saying, let me ask you this. John and AB weren't having it yesterday. This is until Mets do his part. Do you think if Torrens keeps this up when Alvy is ready, he might be out of a lineup spot? I'm just saying he looks great. I don't think he'll be out of the lineup. I think the best case scenario is what I said earlier, is a 50-50 split. If Torrens is playing so well, it gives the Mets wiggle room to ease Francisco Alvarez back into the lineup. And if Hayden Singer becomes a decent catcher behind the plate and is able, to play well, you don't have to rush Alvy back. You remember last season, Alvarez got hurt, same injury, kind of same injury to the hand. Was it sliding around first base? Or he fell turning first base. And who did we have? Omar Narvaez, awful. Tomas Nido, not good. No offense to Tomas Nido, who's a great guy. But he just wasn't good last year. He wasn't even a good defender last year. So what happens? Francisco Alvarez has to rush back. We don't need to do this if both Torrens and Sanger are playing well. Let Alvy heal. Let his hand heal. Because the biggest part of Alvy, and this is the hand that's going to be catching pitches here. So there's going to be friction. There's going to be some pain that he's going to feel in that hand. Let Alvy get to 100%. Bring him back. Once he's 100%, you send Sanger down. And this is if Sanger's playing well. Otherwise, the 50-50 split to me is the way to go. At least for now. Brandon Gray saying, if Torrens can keep up with anything close to this pace, he should be our number one catcher. Alvy hasn't earned the spot. He has amazing potential, but Torrens is better now. Torrens is the better player right now, and he's the hot hand, right? And you keep playing the hot hand. I think it's going to be 50-50. Carlos Ramos saying, I love me some Alvy. I have him among the 7 Mets that will hit 20-plus home runs in 2025. But Torrens, as of now, looks way better in his opinion. Carlos Ortiz saying Torrens was one of the best pickups ever. And, yeah. I mean, what more can you say about Luis Torrens? Continuing with the good vibes of this part of the team, we got to look into the starting pitching of the New York Mets because they've been pretty good. They have been pretty good to start the year. Even Senga had his moments. He looked good at some points. Where did he look bad? Where he always looks bad. In the first inning. Always has struggled. But what do you take away from Kodai Senga's first game? Most importantly is his health. And to see how he heals heading into his next start. So far, so good. I will take that from Kodai Senga. And the defense, Francisco Lindor, who admitted it, took the brunt of all of the errors that he had, those 2 errors that he had, was held accountable. He held himself accountable. Even Kodai Senga held himself accountable. But those errors cost Kodai Senga a game there. Who else? Let's go with Clay Holmes next because he has the 2 starts of the season. 4 2/3 innings pitched in both starts. What I take away from that is the next thing he needs to do is build and get himself to that 5th inning. 5 innings pitched. He's got a 2.89 ERA in those 2 starts. That's pretty good, right? Going against Houston and a young Miami Marlins team. Got to work on the stamina. Got to work on that stamina. I think he will be fine. D says he's like what he's seen so far from Clay Holmes, and so have I. David Peterson. And Maureen is saying it. David Peterson could be our ace. G Money Stack saying David Peterson for starters. He was great after the hip surgery. Carlos Ramos saying David Peterson will be signing an extension after the 2025 season. Long-term Mets number 3. He had the longest outing so far. 6 innings pitched, had 9 strikeouts. And that was the Mets' first win against Miami. I think it was that 10-4 win. He pitched very well. I think he only gave up 2 runs. Did a great job. There's 2 home runs I think he gave up. But David Peterson looked very well in his first start back. Cindy McGrath saying Peterson is her boy. The only one of our starting pitchers to go 6 innings. Like I mentioned, 89 pitches, 9 strikeouts, 4 walks. Excellent game. Thank you for the full stat line there, Cindy. Appreciate that. Yeah, David Peterson looked very impressive. And he may end up being the ace of the staff considering what we're going to talk about next with injuries. But I like what I've seen from David Peterson all the way back to when he returned from his hip surgery, which G Money Stacks mentioned there. And then you got Tyler McGill, who's going to get the opening day start at home, or the home opener start. And Griffin Canning, both of them look good. Tyler McGill got the win in Houston, the only win that they got. He pitched 5 innings, only gave up 3 hits, 1 run. He got 6 strikeouts and 1 walk. Griffin Canning, 5 2/3 innings pitched, 4 hits, 2 earned runs, gave up 2 walks, and had 4 strikeouts. Now, let's talk about the most important part of this entire rotation and what they did for this Mets team, which they didn't do last April and definitely not in the first week. David Peterson, 6 innings. Kodai Senga, 5. McGill, 5. Griffin Canning, 5 2/3. Clay Holmes, 4 2/3 innings pitched in both of his starts. But they weren't giving us less than 4 innings. Remember the struggle to get these guys to go 5, 6 innings last year to start the season, which killed the bullpen? A little bit better start here, and hopefully they can build off of that and get some home cooking once they get to Citi Field. Now, as G Money Stacks is alluding to, Sean Manaea and Frankie Montas, and let's talk about a little bit of injury updates when it comes to these 2 guys right here. And look, I am not shocked by any injury or setbacks, or nothing shocks me these days. But Sean Manaea who is trying to come back from that right oblique strain, had a setback, inflammation, while trying to ramp up. Got a PRP injection, just like Frankie Montas, has been shut down for 2 weeks. So we're probably not going to see him now until the end of May, early June, if all things end up right. So we have to figure he is not going to be a part of this. Frankie Montas, high-grade lat strain, resumed throwing from 60 feet this past week. He also had received that PRP injection at the time of the injury. Now, how did the Mets handle this injury issue? They're going to go to battle with this rotation that they have right now. Paul Blackburn, who we haven't talked about yet, started the season on the IL. He can't catch a break himself. Right knee inflammation. Thankfully, no structural damage. I think he started throwing. So he may be back sooner than later. We'll definitely be back if all stays healthy. We'll definitely be back before Montas and Manaea. Because the Mets played the Marlins, people keep talking about the Sandy Alcantara trade. I don't see it happening at this moment. I definitely don't. I think the more realistic approach, maybe we see at some point Brandon Sproat, Blade Tidwell, or even Dom Hamill. Sproat did not have a good first game. He lost his first game, gave up 4 earned runs in 2 innings pitched. Tidwell, on the other hand, 5 innings pitched, 1 earned run, 5 strikeouts, and a walk. So you got to see the good of Blade Tidwell, who I thought everyone talked about him being reliever. And then Dom Hamill, 5 innings pitched, 2 hits, no runs, 3 strikeouts. I assume that we will see a Hamill or Tidwell. And maybe at some point, if Sproat gets himself back together, because he struggled in AAA so far, especially in last season, I think we will see one of these guys before they make some type of trade, especially a big one with that guy in Miami who, took care of business against us in game 2 of the series, Sandy Alcantara. Now, I want to talk about the Mets bullpen because that has been the absolute strength of this Mets pitching staff. The standouts so far, Max Kranick, who Stanley Babbage just mentioned in the chat. Huascar Brazaban, who got the save in the game in Miami, that series finale. 2 guys, and Kranick and Brazaban, who were fighting for that final spot until Paul Blackburn got on the IL. You can't send any of these 2 guys down once Paul Blackburn returns. You just can't. They've been lights out. If I go to Huascar Brazaban's stats, 5 innings pitched so far. He's got 5 strikeouts. He's only given up 1 walk, only 2 hits. Like I mentioned, he got the saves. He hasn't given up a run. Same thing with Max Kranick. He doesn't have the strikeouts, but in 3 2/3 innings pitched, no hits, no walks, no runs. D said it. Kranick saved our pen for Wednesday. On point, on the money. Carlos Ramos saying Mets bullpen will be better than the Dodgers bullpen at the end of 2025. Again, from your lips to God's ears. I sure hope so. We all know that this is not the final look at this bullpen. We are going to see other names in here. Daniel Nunez is going to come in here at some point. Cindy McGrath saying they have been amazing, and I wasn't exactly thrilled when we traded for Brazaban last season. I know you put signed, but they did trade for Brazaban last year during the trade deadline, which when I saw all the trades the Mets made at the deadline, I thought that Huascar Brazaban was the steal of the trade deadline. I really did. I thought he was going to be an impact player in the bullpen for the playoff push. Obviously, he wasn't. He showed out this spring. He's showing out right now what I thought he could be. And hopefully this continues to carry. The rotation has to help, though. They got to give us more innings. Can't tire these guys out like they did to Reed Garrett last season, who was outstanding in April, then got hurt and wasn't the same. Wasn't the same lights out pitcher. Speaking of Reed Garrett, him and Jose Butto, my guy, Jose Butto, who got the win in the series finale in Miami, pitching very solid in extra innings relief. They have pitched well as well. Their ERA, both 0. If you can keep those 2 guys healthy and strong, And you all know from watching this podcast that Jose Butto is my guy. I've been the biggest fan of Jose Butto, and I just want to see him continue to succeed, whether it was as a starter or as a reliever. And I'm happy they've just found a place to secure Jose Butto. And if it's in the bullpen, let him be in the bullpen. Yeah, like Carlos Ramos says, it's my guy. It always gives me a smile thinking about Jose Butto, man. But the bullpen has been really good. The only struggles, as surprising as it is, maybe for one of the pitchers, but not the other, both lefties. You know, I always talk, as much as I talk about Jose Butto on this bullpen, you know that I've talked about the Mets' need for two lefties in the bullpen every season. And they get it here with A.J. Minter, a seasoned vet, and then Danny Young. Minter, same thing applies to Francisco Lindor, applies to A.J. Minter. Minter has the track record. But Danny Young doesn't. And he's struggled. And to me, he's on a short leash. When it's time for Paul Blackburn to return, or you want to finally bring up the Daniel Nunez, bye, Danny Young. I'm sorry. He scares me every time he comes in. There's always that one pitcher out of the bullpen that scares you when they come in. What was it in 2022? Who was the lefty that was coming out for the Mets in 2022? So Eduardo Rodriguez? I can't remember. If you guys, this is again, brain fart on players from the past, but if you remember the lefty that came out of the bullpen that always struggled, no matter what, I think he had over a 5 ERA too. Funny guy, but he struggled. And look, if Danny Young can't cut it, I don't see anywhere that David Stearns is going to hold on to these guys. He has no patience for this. If you are going to stink up the joint, then you're going to be off this team. Look at what happened when the Mets were up 10-2. Danny Young gets the first 2 outs and then proceeds to give 4 straight hits and starts walking people and gives up 2 runs. Then in the game of the series finale, he can't get the save. He can only get 1 out. And they go to Huascar Brazoban to get the save. So Danny Young on a short leash. A guy that's not on a short leash, Ryan Stanek, been pitching well himself. Hasn't given up any runs either. He hasn't pitched as much. He has pitched the least. If you could believe that, Carlos and Cindy, who been talking about him in the chat. Ryan Stanek is pitched the least out of the bullpen so far. Wild stuff. I don't know if they're trying to ramp him up a little bit more or the situation hasn't been right, but he has pitched the least amount. Edwin Diaz only pitched 2 innings, but has looked pretty good. And you know what you're going to get. I've mentioned this before. You know what you're going to get from Edwin Diaz right from the start. Right from the start, you know what you're getting from Edwin Diaz. Before we start wrapping up the show, you know, the home opener preview and what we can see from this team moving forward going into this weekend against the Toronto Blue Jays, I have the pitching probables. You can see them on the bottom of the screen right there scrolling. Kevin Gossman on Friday going against Tyler McGill, as well as Chris Bassett on Saturday, 1-0 with a 1.50 ERA against Griffin Canning, who's 0-1. And we got Francis against David Peterson in the series finale. They're both 1-0 with a 3.00 ERA. I don't know what game you're looking forward to the most, the pitching matchup, but I think that Gausman-McGill matchup could be very good to start the series here. Hopefully the Mets can get the best of Kevin Gausman. I remember a time where the Mets were trying to sign Kevin Gausman. And look, another opening day start for Tyler McGill. I mean, what more can I say? Hopefully he pitches just as well against them as he did against Houston. All of this is pending rainouts. I mean, the schedule has rain. The weather forecast has rain all weekend. So who knows what games we're getting in. If we're getting all three in, maybe it'll be a double header. We'll see. But those are the pitching probables for the New York Mets. And one final thing, the news and happenings. And it's only one thing I want to talk about real quick, and that is this MLB app issue on opening day. I don't know if any of you had trouble, but I could not get into the game for about the first 4 or 5 innings. And I was very, very angry and upset about it. And to find out that we only get back, because I wanted some type of refund for not being able to watch opening day. Brad saying it was a joke and he was pissed. Yeah, so was I. It affected all over the MLB app on opening day of all things. And the only thing we get back, and I agree with, I think it was Evan Roberts who said this on WFAN, is the way that they are paying back us is by giving us a, what was it, a $10 off, $25. So we have to spend to then get something back. Come on, MLB. Got to be a little bit better than this. At least, at the very least, give us one free day to watch all baseball games. That's what I would do. Yeah, Maureen said it. All they gave us is a measly $10 credit on merch. Yep, that glitch on the MLB app. Carlos Ramos was pissed. Brad thought he didn't renew or something. This was my first time. Just all I have is this SNY subscription that they had promoted all off season. And I said, you know what? I don't have cable. Let me get this SNY subscription so I can watch the games. So I go on the TV and SNY is not on the MLB app on TV. The only thing I can watch is pregame, the game, and then postgame on the TV. If I go on the app on my phone or if I go on the computer, I can watch all other SNY content, but not on the app on the TV. MLB's got to figure this out. I don't know if it's MLB, SNY. Someone has to figure this out and get it right. Otherwise, I need more than $10 off merch that I have to buy. Brad, I got it on my email. They sent an email. You got to read through all the MLB emails because they send a lot to see if you got that. Last season, I had MLB.TV for free, the MLB app, because I was a partial ticket holder, and you get that being a partial ticket holder, but you won't be able to see the Mets because they're all blacked out. You can only watch all the other teams. That's another thing too. Can we get rid of the blackouts? That's right, Maureen. Get rid of these blackouts. Please get rid of the blackouts. If MLB wants to attract more fans, can you do right by the fans? Make sure your app works on opening day. Make sure that there's no blackouts. Like, what others? Like, why? Ugh, frustrating. Very frustrating. But we've got the home opener coming up. I hope you guys all get to enjoy the home opener, whether you watch it live or you watch it later on because you're working. but I'm excited to watch Mets baseball again. Even with us having the 2 days off, that weird Sunday off, and now having the Thursday off, but Mets baseball's back, and we're finally at home. Shout out to 100 people in the chat right now watching this on YouTube and on X. Appreciate you all for tuning into the Subway to Shea podcast. Thank you for letting me vent at the beginning of the show, talking about my little pup Cheech, who we lost. But appreciate you all for tuning into Subway to Shea. We will be back. There'll be a bonus episode with Adam Richman, Chef Adam Richman, talking about the Burger Hall of Fame, which you can get at Citi Field. He's got a couple of good burgers out there, a pub burger and a fiesta burger. Tried both of them. Delicious. Make sure you check that interview out. That's coming up this weekend. But for Anthony Rivera, for the Subway to Shea podcast, you know what the final words are, and they're always, let's go Mets.